Hello guys, welcome back. Now in this tutorial, we are going to build another flow requirement. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the requirement is. So John is working as a system admin at My Tutorial Rack. He received a requirement to update the case fields like case status, case priority, and account name. So basically, the first screen that we are going to create here would be, we will capture what will be the new values of case status, case priority, and the account name. So you can see here, we're going to have a case status pick list. Then we are going to have a case priority pick list. And then the next one would be the account name, which is nothing but a lookup ID. And then after the case has been successfully updated, so we are going to have a button which is like an update button. Then what will happen is whatever the values user has entered for this particular case, then those values will be updated on that case. And then there's going to be another screen displayed telling them that the case has been successfully updated. Now, in the case, if the case status has been updated to close, so you know there are multiple status of case, right? It can be new, working, escalated, closed, etc. But only in the case of case close, means once the user has decided to close the case, only in that case, an email would be sent to the contact email, and also you can send it to yourself as well. Okay, so that is the whole requirement. So we're going to use multiple different elements for this flow. So let's go ahead and take a look at the screen elements that we will be using. So the first screen, this is going to be the first screen that you will be creating. This is where the user will enter the new values of that case. Okay, so this is a case status, so it will have all the pick list values related to the case status. Account name, this is going to be a lookup field, which is basically you can choose the account that this case is related to. So you can go ahead and choose any account under here. And then the priority, it is high, low, or medium. So these are the three things the user is going to pick up. And once the user has went to the next, there's going to be a next button, and then all of these values will be updated on the case. And then this is the screen that will be presented to that user. Now, one important thing is which case we are going to update, right? So we need the ID of the case, right? So that ID is going to be coming to this flow. And how is this ID will be passed? So we are going to create a button on the case records. Okay, so this on the case record, we are going to add a custom button, which will call it as update case. Okay, this is the name of the button. Through this button, we will be launching the flow, and on to this flow, we will be passing the ID of the case, because we need the ID in order to figure out which case record to update, right? Because once you provide these values, you need to figure out, okay, which case I need to update these values for. So you need the ID of that case record. And how is this ID going to come? This ID is going to be coming from that button. So on the button, we will be invoking the flow, and to that flow, we will also pass the ID. So the first thing we need is we need to create a variable on the flow which will store the ID of that case record. Okay, that is the first important thing we need to do, is we need to create a variable which will store the ID which is going to be passed to this flow. So let's go ahead and go over to our Salesforce, and let's create our flow. So I'm going to go back here. Let me close this, and let's go ahead and go back and open up our Salesforce. So over here, I'm going to log in, and the record the org that I'm going to go is this one, Deepika Khanna, and then I'm going to hit the login here. So we are going to go ahead and go over to the quick find, type in flows, and under the process automation, we will go to the flow, and then we are going to create a new flow here. Okay, and this is going to be a screen flow, and we are going to use the option as freeform. So the first screen that needs to be created would have these three things: case status, account name, and priority. Okay, so let's go back and add the screen element over here. Okay, and so what I'm going to call this, we are going to say case update details. And to this one, we are going to add, the first thing we're going to add would be a pick list, right? That is for the case status. Okay, so here the label would be case status, and we are going to use a pick list, right? So where is this pick list going to come from? So we will create a new choice resource, and it's going to be a pick list type, and the name will be called as case status. That's the API name for this pick list. Now, where the values of this pick list will come from? So the values will come from the case object, and there is going to be a pick list. So on the case object, you have multiple fields. So which field are going to be used as the source for this pick list values? So there is a field called status. So status field will be used, and whatever is available on that status field on the case object, the same exact pick list values will be shown over here. Now the next thing is we need to have a lookup. So I'm going to go ahead and input a lookup field here. Okay, and the lookup field, which lookup field? So on the case object, there is a lookup field called account. So what can I do it? Let me show to you. If I go back and duplicate this one, and now if you go and open up any case record, okay, so I'm going to go to the cases, and on this cases, let's go ahead and take a look at all the cases that we have. So this is the list of cases, and over here on the right hand side, you can see there is a field which is like a lookup. So when you do that, you can provide another account name here. So this is a lookup field, right, which is account name. But let's go ahead and take a look at what is the API name for this field. So if I go over to the edit object here, and now under here, if I look for account, you will see there is a field name called, field name is account ID. It's a lookup field. So this is the same field we want to show it on the flow. So here, the API name, we can call it as case, or we can say account name. That is what we're going to call it. I'm going to have this one. And now this field, the lookup field, is going to be coming from case object. So the object API name is case. So we're going to choose that object API name. And then it is asking you here, what is the field API name? So we just saw that the field API name is account ID. So that is what we are going to refer here, account ID. Now label, what do you want to display here? So we can say enter account, enter new account. Okay, that is the label here. So this is the lookup field we have added. Now the next thing we need to do here is we also need to add another pick list for the priority of the case. Okay, so this is going to be the pick list, and we are going to call it as priority, and this is going to be a pick list. Now what are the values for this pick list? So we are going to create a new choice resource, and this is also going to be a pick list. And we will call it as priority status pick list. Okay, this is going to be the pick list API name. Now the values is going to again come from the case object only for this pick list. And which field are we talking about? We are talking about the priority field on the case object. So if you go back here on the case, you will see there is a field called priority as well, which is a pick list. And what are the values for that pick list? So the values are over here. So these are the three values. So the same exact values will be shown over here as well. So let's go ahead and hit the done here. Let me connect both of them, and let's go ahead and hit the save, and we will call it as update case flow. This is the name of the flow, and then hit the save button. So now let's go ahead and run this. I'm not activating it because we have not yet finished working on the flow. So you can see here, whatever the values that you pull up on that case record. So if you go back to any case record here, let's say I open this case record. Now on the status, you can see these are the different values. Similarly, on the priority also, these are the values. And then account name is nothing but a lookup. So you can look up any of the account that we have in our org. So you can say Edge Communication. Similarly, if I go over to this one, you can choose any of these options. Then you can look up any account. So let's say if I wanted to look up Edge Communication, I can choose Edge Communication. There is another account called United. So these are all the different accounts related to this with the word United in them. And then you can also choose what is the priority. Okay, so these are the three fields that I'm going to be updating. Okay, the user is going to enter the new values for the field. Now the next thing is, whatever the values that I have entered on the screen, I'm going to update it on the record. The first thing I need, as I mentioned to you, we need to do is we need a variable, right? We need a variable to store the ID of the record. The reason we need that variable to store the ID is because that is the record we are going to be updating, right? So we have, let's say, 20 case records. Now, how are we going to differentiate that, okay, which of those 20 case records we need to update whatever the values that the user has provided on the screen? So that ID is going to be coming from that button that we are going to be creating, which will launch the flow. And that ID will be stored in a variable that we need to create. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one, and let's go back. And now let's create a new resource. Okay. And what is the type of the resource? I'm going to use the type as variable. So here I can say case ID variable. So this is the API name that I'm going to use. And what is the data type? It's simple, a text. The complete ID will be sent. Now, availability outside the flow. Now here, I don't have to choose both options because this is something that the value is going to come from outside, right? From the button itself. So I'm going to use available for input here and then go ahead and hit done here. Okay, so this is the variable that I have created. Let's go ahead and hit the save. Now we need to update the record. So there is a element available called updating the records. So we're going to go ahead and drop that element on our canvas, and we are going to say update case record. Now, how to find the records to update, right? So it is asking you, how are you going to find the records that you want to update? So there are two options. Use the IDs and all field values from a record or record collection. You can use either of this option, or you can specify the condition to identify the records. So I'm going to use the second option because I can specify that this is the exact case record that I'm going to be pulling off. So I'm going to choose the conditions. So update the records of which type? So I'm going to go ahead and choose case here. Okay, so this is the record that I'm going to be updating. Now, how are you going to filter the case records? Because you have a lot of case records. So I'm going to be only figuring out, or I'm going to only retrieve the record whose ID. Okay, so there is the ID is equal to whatever the value that came into our variable. So whatever that came into here, this variable will have the ID, and whatever the ID is, that is the ID of the case that I want to retrieve. Now, once you have retrieved that case, what are the new values on that case that you want to update? So the status on that case will be equal to whatever I have provided on this status pick list, right? So this is the case status pick list. So whatever I have provided over on that chosen from that pick list, that is going to be the new value. Similarly, there is a field called account ID on the case that is going to be set up to the new account that I have provided, right? Account name. So that is what I'm going to be using. So account name dot record ID. And then the third thing would be the priority. So the priority on the case will come from whatever I have provided on that screen component, right? Priority. So there is two priorities, right? One is the pick list. So this has all the pick list values that are available on that field. So that is the pick list values, all of them. That's a collection, right? That's a choices. Now, whatever from that choice you have chosen, that is stored in this screen component. So that is the new value that I'm going to be setting up on this case priority field. Now, that is my update records. Okay, so let's go ahead and save all of this. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the save button. So now my case needs to be updated. So let's go ahead and test only this part. Okay, only this part we are going to test. After the update records, right, that is going to happen on behind the scenes. So we wanted to let the user notify that the case has been updated successfully. So let's go ahead and drop another screen component, and this is a simple screen component. Okay, successful case update. Okay, this is going to be the label. And on this label, all I'm going to be doing is a simple display text. I'm going to be showing up here. I'm going to say that the text for case update. And what I'm going to say here, I'm going to say thank you, congratulations. Let's just do that. Congratulations, your case has been updated successfully. Okay, so this is what we have. Now if you want to make it bold, you can make it bold and then hit the done, and now we have hit the save button. So now if I'm gonna go ahead and connect these two, because that's very important, otherwise you won't be able to activate, because you've already got a warning that you have a successful case update which is not connected to anything. So we are going to be connecting this over to this screen. So now we have created our straightforward flow. Now we are going to activate this flow. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and activate this flow. So I will be launching this flow from a button. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over here, and let me go and look up my case close one here. So the one that I've created, update case flow. And if I go, let's go ahead and look at the details and version. So this is the name you need to, this is the URL that you will need when you will be launching the flow from the button. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and let's go over to the case. We will be creating a new button here. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a new button, and the name for the button, I will call it as update case. Okay, that is what the name for the label on the button would be, update case. Now what will I be doing with this button? So this is a detail page button. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this option, the second one, and I'm taking it to a URL. Okay, that is what I'm going to do. So what is the URL? This is going to be the URL. To this URL, I will be passing the variable value, right? And what is our variable? So the variable that we created is this one. So if I go ahead and open it, now you can see there is, this is the variable case ID var. So the value of this variable, I'm going to go ahead and pass it. And what will be the value? Whatever is the case ID. That is what we will be passing. So what this button is, when you click on the button, it will take in the ID of the case, because we will be adding this button on the case detail page, right? So the detail page on the URL itself, this is where we will be adding. So the button will be added over here. And as you can see here, this URL contains the ID. So this is the ID that we will be passing over to this variable, case ID variable, and which is going to be the case ID. Very simple. So if you had any more parameters to pass, let's say your flow is expecting few more things like case number and stuff, you can provide all of that over here as well. So this is the ID that we are passing, and then let's go ahead and hit the save button. Now I can say the new custom button will not be displayed to the users until you add it to the page layout. So we just created a button, right? Now, when you go back to the case, you won't see that new button, because this new button needs to be added onto your page layout. So it doesn't have that button anywhere, right? So what we're going to do is we are going to add this button on the case layout. So if I go ahead and click on that, you can see under the buttons, the new button is available called update case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this button over here, which says custom buttons. That is where I'm going to drop it. Now, once I do that, make sure you save it. And now we have successfully added the button. So let's go ahead and refresh this page and make sure that the custom button is displayed. You can see here, now we have the update case button. So through this update case button, which flow you're going to be invoking? This flow. Okay, so now let's go ahead. We are on this record 100. So now let me just go ahead and save this record on a notepad. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save the complete record. And now I'm going to be going over to update case. Now my flow has been launched. So this is the flow. Now previously, let's go ahead and check the previous values. I'm not updating anything. So the previous status is closed. Okay, so already the previous values of this case, the status is equals to closed. That is the previous value. Now the priority is high. So you can see here, this is the priority, which is high. And the account name that is connected to, this is Edge Communications. Okay, so the account name is Edge Communications. So those are the values before we do an update. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit the update here. The first thing is we are going to revert back the status from closed to working. Okay, so let's say the case wasn't closed. We still have few more things to do. So we updated the case to working. Now it has been moved over to a different account. Now initially it was at under Edge Communication. We are moving it to United. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up United Singapore here. That is going to be the new account this case will be under. And the priority in the previous case, what was the priority? So the old value priority is high. So let's go ahead and move it to medium. Okay, so this is the new values for the case. So let's go ahead and hit the next here. Oops, we got a message saying an unhandled fault has occurred in the flow. Let's go ahead and check it out. So I think I made a mistake here. I forgot to add an exclamation. So we were just passing the case.id. So I have to go ahead and put an exclamation here. I missed that exclamation. So that is going to be the ID of the case record. Okay, so make sure you update your button or link page URL. So this is the flow name, and to the flow name we are passing the ID of the record. So case.of_id will be the record. Make sure you add an exclamation. Now let's go back and refresh the page one more time here, and we were on this record, right? So let's go ahead and make sure nothing has been changed here. So let me go back to this record. So let's go ahead and copy this URL. And let's go ahead and do the Control V. Now, yep, the values are still the same, closed, high, and this is the Edge Communication. Now let's go back and update the case over here. And now we will change the case status to working. Again, this is going to be United, and then this is going to be medium, and then I'm going to hit the next here. Everything went successful. Congratulations, your case has been updated successfully. Now let's go ahead and see if it actually got updated. So now if I go back to that case, this was the case that I was looking at, right? And now you can see the new values are status. The new values for status has been changed to working. The priority has been updated to medium, which was high before. And then here, the account name has been updated to United Oil and Gas. Initially, what it was Edge Communication. So let's go ahead and do another example. Let's go ahead and pick up another case here. So I'm going to go ahead and go over to all open cases. So these are all the cases that I have, and let's go ahead and pick up this one, 1002. Let me go ahead and just for the saving purpose, I'm going to replace it with this ID now. And what are the values here for the status? So let's say the status on this is new, priority is low. So you can see the priority is low. And then what is the account here? Account name is United Oil and Gas Corp. Okay, so the account name is the United Oil and Gas. Okay, so this is the existing values on this record. Now what we're going to do, we are going to be updating this case record. And what we are going to change, we are going to make this from new, we are going to change it to closed. Now this has been moved over to Edge Communication. That is the other account that we have. And then the priority is high. So now these are the new values. So now let's go ahead and hit next here. You can see the case has been successfully updated. Now going back to the record, that is the link for this record. 1002 was the case ID number. So you can see here. Now the case has been moved to closed. Priority has been changed to high, and the account name is Edge Communication. So our case has been getting updated successfully. So this part has been done. So we have John is working, the case fields this, case has been updated successfully, and this is the screen that we are displaying. Now the next thing is, in case if the case status has been updated to close, then you have to notify the email. This is the last requirement that we have on this. So how are we going to achieve that? We have already done something similar. So I will recommend you to do it on your own. And I'm going to give you the solution of this last piece of the puzzle in the next tutorial. But make sure you have practiced this on your own time, okay? And then you go ahead and check out the next one for the feedback, okay? So I'm going to talk to you in the next tutorial. Thank you so much and have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.